Welcome to the lair of OmnusI once more. My son Alex and I have had another night with a good bit of adventuring, and I thought I would pass that along to you through the First Steps channel to read about his exploit, or to hear from me about his exploits. I wish to emphasize that for everything he's done, I have not been cheating or doing anything. He's been doing just fine on his own, and as you'll find out tonight, he's doing rather well. After his last session, he and his band of NPCs had gotten rid of a group of rather nasty priests of Nerul who were raising undead in the Greyhawk ruins adventure that he's in. So they killed them, which was well done. And they were ready to continue further as soon as his party had recovered from some paralyzing gas that they had thrown in to act as an equalizer. Probably a good thing, because those priests were rather nasty. They ended up having to wait a total of 5 hours for both Frank the Fighter and Bernie the Bard to recover from their paralysis. In that time they had explored around. They had found out that the giant ants that had pretty much honeycombed this level of the dungeon had created an entrance into the room they were in, which made them feel a little nervous. They had also... well, they'll find that later. So they decided that they are going to go up a flight of stairs that lead out of this room, which leads to a trapdoor, and into which is a kind of a pantry. This is the way the evil priests were using to get into level 2, pretty much undetected by the usual methods of moving around by the adventurers. So they explored the room, found out there were some very nasty traps that would have met anybody trying to get in the room from the other way, but they were easily able to disarm those traps because spears weren't pointed their direction. So they plucked the spears, which they found out were poisoned, and they opened the door. Inside were the undead guards that the priests had posted. There was the son of Caius, a nasty zombie that is covered in writhing worms that can turn other people into moving corpses as well as 3 of the garden variety zombies. Now, zombies are not the toughest foes, but they're persistent. In 5th edition, they have a chance, if you don't beat them down soundly enough, of just getting up and coming back, which is something that 5th edition is as far as I know, I don't remember 4th edition letting them do that, and it certainly wasn't any prior edition. So that does make zombies a little bit more of a recurring punching dummy. But the group branched out and tried fighting. For the most part, William the Warlock just stood around blasting zombies with good effect. Frank moved up and got attacked and got beaten down by the son of Caius. Again, he is the worst lucked fighter ever. He's not terrible. He's not going to be stealing the stage away from Humbly, Alex's Dwarven Paladin, anytime soon. And Bernie the Bard, well, he just kind of frittered around, firing his crossbow, trying to help, but not very effectively. For the most part, the party sliced up the zombies primarily with Frank doing some initial damage, Humbly playing cleanup, and William blasting away at zombies once he had a little bit of space. So, wasn't a great deal of tactics. They were fighting inside of a kitchen that was already plundered. Not a lot of gains for it. So they beat them, and then they had to rest while they got Frank back up on his feet. Humbly had also used up the last of his healing, lay on of hands, bringing himself back from having taken a bit of a pounding. But for the most part, the group was ready to continue. Bernie used a healing spell to bring Frank back to his feet, and Frank used his second wind, which I hadn't really considered very much how effective that second wind was going to be for a fighter. But every single fighter who doesn't treasure that ability as a lifesaver is kind of a fool. For those of you not familiar with 5th edition, it's fighters have an ability to basically, through raw mental just stick-to-itiveness, heal some of their wounds, ignoring an injury that they've had because they're that tough. It doesn't do a lot, but they can do it once between any length of rest. So if you have a battle, and then right after it they rest, they can use their second win right away, and it's basically sort of like using a free hit die, which is kind of nice. And they get a 1d10 plus their level added to their hit points, which, so as they level up, that gets a little bit more useful. So they decided they were going to continue on, and they found a large room, a big feast hall with 2 large banquet tables, and we laid out the battle. There were also 4 skeletons in makeshift armor on either side of the door, and skeletons armed with javelins who were sitting down the table places. Well, the party could pretty easily tell that the armor was packed with zombie, so they immediately set in and started attacking. This time, while Frank and Humbly were taking on a pair of zombies, the other 2 zombies fell off the table in their haste to attack everyone else because they're clumsy, and I made them roll and they failed. So initially, William was more interested in blasting zombies. He was worried about those javelins. So the javelins came in. They didn't do a great deal of harm. So Bernie came up to a zombie and rapiered it, and the zombies got up and ruined Bernie first, just dropped. And then a javelin and another zombie attack dropped William. So now only the fighter and the paladin were up in this battle. Well, the fighter realized that they were about to be overrun. They'd only killed off 1 zombie and a skeleton at this point. He and Humbly tag teamed and took out another zombie, and then he basically said, "You've got the armor, you've got the endurance, stand there in the doorway, and you can hold them off. I'll get these 2 out of danger and awake." So Alex was like, "Yeah, sure, that's a good idea." So he backed up, and it was him versus 2 more zombies and all these skeletons and everything, and it looked pretty grim. But Frank rolled a natural 20 on his medicine roll, which I adjudicated, was able to get up the bard. And the next round, the bard used his last healing spell, his healing song, to bring back William. Now it was Frank and Humbly in front of this arch, funneling the enemies to them, while William was able to continue blasting through. Very effective tactic, more effective than when they charged into the room, but they're learning. He's learning a lot of these things. That's why I'm making an effort to use my mini-map and draw out the structures so that he can kind of see the tactical side of it and start to learn these kind of things. So the bottleneck worked. Humbly took him some more shots, but again, because he's so lucky the way that he rolled his hit points, he's got 39 hit points at max, so he was still in fairly decent shape. So even though now the bard is out of spells, and Humbly is now completely out of healing, they've used their hit dice, they decide they're going to go into another room. So they continue exploring. They find a room full of troglodytes. 4 troglodytes. And these guys are buffed up and rather tough. And then my dice went south, and Alex's dice just took off. All told through the night, he rolled like 5 20s. And in 5th edition, that's a critical hit that basically does double weapon damage. So between he and Frank, they just completely crushed the troglodytes. They didn't stand much of a chance. Excuse me. So that was kind of a not very exciting battle. Out of it, I believe they ended up using the last of their hit dice in a final rest to basically get almost up to full. But again, without any spells or anything, so they were in danger. And I told Alex, if this next fight doesn't sound like something you can deal with, there's no shame in running away and coming back to it when you're at full strength. So they went down another branch of corridors, and they came across a pair of shadows that he detected. And these undead horrors started drifting towards them. The party decided they were going to fight. So between humbly moving up and attacking. And he's like looking through, and he's like, okay, these are undead. And he, went through a couple options. And I'm like, you do have this ability to make your weapon sacred. It will act as a magical weapon and hurt these shadows more. And he liked that idea. Before he did that, though, he attacked one and hurt it and found out it didn't do a great deal. But it was a weak shadow. I'm still sometimes using the hit points spread when they make sense from the monsters as they were in the module. Generally, it means it has a few less hit points, but he's running his first adventure, so I decided to let him feel a little more heroic about it. So Frank moves up and he hits it and rolls maximum damage and ends up destroying one of the shadows. So now they have the toughest of the shadows and another one who isn't involved in this fight yet. And that one walked through the wall because they're incorporeal and attacked the spellcasters. He hit Bernie first, and by just pure luck, Bernie did not drop from that hit, which was kind of surprising because he's only a first level bard. So he runs away. He disengages completely and runs back over by Frank and Humbly. It's like, oh my gosh, it's going to get me, it's going to get me, which left it to duel with William the Warlock, whose blast could hurt it, but I started rolling nothing but 5s for him. So he wasn't doing anything. Humbly turned around and, being the champion, he finished off the one that was on him. He had enchanted on his sword his hammer. Then he turned around and he came through and a couple of big blows, again another 20, and he finished off the shadow. The group then decided it was time to retreat and divvy up spoils because the others, the NPCs, wanted to train up to 3rd level. So all told, he ended up getting 175 gold for his experience. Again, more experience, and came through quite well. Wasn't a lot of role-playing. This is a dungeon delve, so he's still having fun with it, which is I'm excited to see. So, I am, again, Rob, DM at the Lair of OmnusI, and this is my son's first steps for you. Thanks for watching, and have safe adventures.